after putting the bass drum back up and setting the toms on top of it, I feel like the beater head is a little bit too tight. Doesn't sound bad, but it feels like I can't keep the beater against the head, which is one of my techniques when playing rock and roll. So I'm going to detune the head by a quarter turn like this. 1. Let's see if that sounds better to my ear. When I play rock and roll, I like to keep the beater in the head to get more attack and more power. Like that, see? Now, if I play with the beater off the head, you get a little bit more tone, but it's a different effect. It's not quite as aggressive. Now, what I'll do is I'll go back and forth with the front head and the back head, tweaking a little bit, adjusting a few things, until I feel comfortable.
One of the first things I'll concentrate on when it comes to a new set of drums is the kick drum, and in particular the sound of the kick drum. And there's lots of different sounds that you can get out of a bass drum. Sometimes people like a big boomy ambient sound, which you can obviously have with just the natural sound of the drum. I actually prefer a real muffled sort of slappy sound, so you could really hear the attack of the kick drum. And there's lots of ways that you can achieve getting that sort of attack. The approach I use, and ever since day one, since I was a kid up till this day, I use the good old-fashioned traditional pillow. And this happens to be a firm pillow, but you can have a medium one or a fluffy or a down, or any old pillow will work. But I just take a pillow, I put it right in there, I put it right up against the head, and sit it in there as tight as possible. Sometimes you have to use a little duct tape to hold it in place, but I find that that gives me the most muffling, the most amount of punch and attack to the kick drums.
A lot of times, live and in the studio, I'll cut a hole in the front of the in the front head and put in maybe a towel, just enough to muffle a little bit of the ring on the front head and the beater head.
What I like to do is actually cut a hole in the head before replacing it. And the reason for that is, actually there's two reasons. The first is it's easiest for the sound man, whether it be in the studio or live on stage, to get a mic in there to mic the drum. So it's mainly just to make things that much more accessible for him. And the other reason is I think the sound of the bass drum is better when there's a hole in it, because you're sort of letting the air flow through the drum rather than being trapped and having all this ambience in a drum. I like the sound of the air floating through, and it just feels better to me. Okay, the first thing I'll do when it comes time to cut the hole in the bass drum head is I'll find an object, a circular object, around 6 to 8 inches, and use that to form the circle. In this case, I have an 8-inch bell. And what I'll do is I'll place it right on the head and use a knife or a razor blade or whatever to cut the hole. And what I do, because I have 2 bass drums usually, is I'll put the holes on the outer sides of the head. And in the case of my left bass drum, which is the right bass drum if you're looking from the audience, I'll put the hole all the way on the right side of the head, and then on my right bass drum, which is the left bass drum from the audience's perspective, I'll put the hole on the left side of the head. And this way, the holes are on the outside, and my sound man could put all the microphone stands and microphones up on the kit, and they'll be on the outside of the kit without actually blocking and going along in front of the kit.